Okay, we are live. I guess I'm going to see how this works. First time doing both Facebook and YouTube at the same time. Let's see who pops in. I have not streamed to YouTube in a very, very, very long time. So if you're watching on YouTube, just give me a wave or something in the comments to let me know that you're coming from YouTube. What up, Tara? What's going on? I see some people starting to shuffle on in, which is cool. Jan is here. Anybody who's watching, Courtney is here. What up? Very nice to see you. I'm happy to see you. Maria's here. Maria, I missed your birthday. Happy birthday. Croatia is here. What up, Daniela? Diane is here. If you're watching on YouTube, I don't know how many people are going to watch on YouTube. Just give me a shout in the comments so that I know it's working over there. Like I said, I have not streamed to YouTube yet through StreamYard, so this is all new. Craig Cox is on YouTube. I can see. What up, dude? Australia. Miss Jeans, why are you up so early? Are you sure? Yes, I am sure. I'm happy to see you. Everyone's a smart ass. Everybody's here. This is cool. A lot of people showed up. This is good. I think we got a good topic today. Debbie's here. I'm sorry. I think I ate a bug about a minute before I turned the camera on. So if I'm coughing up a lung, that's why. That's all right. It's extra protein in my diet. Nothing wrong with that. Anyway, today we're going to talk about what I think is a really good topic. It's probably long overdue. Andrea, what up? Norma is here. Angela is here. Oh, a lot of people showed up. This is cool. So I want to go over something that I think is a little bit long overdue, and I think my camera isn't. It's a little fuzzy today. I don't know. I tried to clean the lens, but it is what it is. So I want to talk today about the idea that your past and the experiences that you've had can add a wrinkle to the process of recovering from an anxiety disorder. Sometimes a really big wrinkle, sometimes huge hurdles, sometimes heavy weights to lift. Like past experiences, specifically things like trauma or abuse, are real. Like those are real things, and they often add an extra dimension to anxiety recovery that people who have not experienced don't have to deal with. So those are very real things, but I want to talk about the idea. A serious wrinkle, correct. I do have the glamour lens on, right? It's like, I don't know why it's so like, hang on, let's try something. I don't know why it's so like, let's see. Yeah, that made it much better. Come on, focus. There we go. Anyway, I think that the thing is, while they do add serious wrinkles, without a doubt, I hear a lot of people, and I think based on those experiences, sometimes based on the things they've been told and taught, and bad things that have been said to people over the years by parents or partners in relationships and stuff, people seem to feel like those past experiences make it impossible to do the things that we talk about on the podcast, right? So I want to say something right away, though, from the beginning to clarify for sure. The methods that we talk about all the time, the Claire Week stuff, the surrender, the acceptance, face, float, let time pass, all the stuff that we talk about, those are not things that are going to solve your trauma or abuse problems, right? Like those are useful tools in learning how not to be afraid of being afraid. Those can be useful tools as part of that process. But this cognitive behavioral approach that we talk about when it comes to fixing anxiety disorders isn't necessarily the thing that's also going to get you through resolving some of those past issues. It's important to understand that. And I talk about this all the time. If you're coming from a situation where you've been traumatized, where you're dealing with maybe some PTSD or complex PTSD, a chronic situation, all of those things. If you're dealing with past abuse and experiences like that, you're going to have to do some work to work on those things. Like it all has to happen either together, sequentially, however way you think is best to do. But you're not going to Claire Weeks your way out of that, out of those things. Like that's true. And I never claim to tell anybody that the things that I'm talking about are meant to address those past issues. They're not. And I don't claim to be a trauma recovery expert in any way. But I've made it my business to become friendly with a lot of people who have. And I made it my business to listen to a lot of people who have lived those experiences and are trying to deal with them alongside, trying to fix an anxiety disorder. So while the methods I talk about are not specific to the process of overcoming trauma or past abuse or past experiences, they can be helpful in that. That being said, and having acknowledged that those past experiences are real and impactful and they matter, I think one of the things that is important is for people to understand that maybe you have had a very dark past or very difficult past. You've been through a lot of things. You've had people in your life who have treated you badly, who have tried to teach you bad lessons about yourself, who have put you down, who have told you that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not worthy, who have abused you, who have betrayed you, who have done terrible things to you. But even when you've had those terrible experiences, and some of you have, and I appreciate that you have, and what that means for you guys, it doesn't mean that you have to be a prisoner to those experiences forever. Like, that's super important. Now, I'm not seeing any comments right now, so I'm hoping that this is still working. I'm hoping it's still working anyway. Now I see the count going down, so that's different, up and down, so that's okay. So part of this problem is that I see people who have lived those experiences come to the table and say, okay, I understand that I have to do these certain things to address this problem, which is the anxiety problem, the agoraphobia, the monophobia, that sort of stuff. Cool, thank you, appreciate it. I know I want to do these things, but my trauma prevents me from doing it. But my past experiences tell me that I'm not good enough. Okay, I can understand all of those things. At some point, and I'm relaying some of the things that I have heard about trauma recovery from some very smart people who are specialists and expert in that field. At some point, you have to take the steps to say, I'm going to acknowledge those things. Some people haven't acknowledged them at all, and they're trying to hide from them. And that isn't going to work out. You're going to have to confront those things at some point. But if you have been confronting those things and you have been working on those things, I think what's going on is, Marcy, yes, the comment got through. You're working on resolving some of those past experiences at the same time that you're working on the anxiety problems. It's super important to understand that at some point in time, when you're doing that work, to confront those old feelings, to confront those old emotions, to start to actually experience them in a safe environment now, because now isn't the past. And do all the things that trauma recovery specialists talk about all the time. You have to start to say, I'm going to have to start to believe that I actually can do these things that this crazy dude on Facebook and YouTube talks about. Like, there's an element of belief in yourself that has to start to surface at some point in the process. And I'm not going to call it, victim mentality, because I think most of the folks that, I know you guys, and I know that you've been in, I see you in my group, I see you on YouTube, I see you on social media. I don't see any victims like in these circles at all. So I applaud that. But at some point, it becomes incumbent upon us to say, well, I've lived, the past has been very difficult, but I can learn lessons from the past. I can learn that the past is going to teach me more than just pain and suffering. I don't have to continually live in the past, and I'm capable of having new experiences going forward with positive outcomes. I can learn new skills. I can learn new things. I can learn a new way, and I can actually take the steps required to teach myself and have others help and support me to learn that those people who did bad things to me were wrong. Like, at some point, it becomes, you have to start to rise up a bit and say, I'm going to start believing in myself. And I'm not going to keep saying that I can't do this because I have these experiences in my rearview mirror. But so much of that has to do with constructively working on those old experiences and working that through. And it means experiencing some of that old pain. And maybe you haven't, and you've been hiding from it. And it means somebody having the compassion. And my friend Monique talks about this all the time, the concept of a compassionate witness. And when bad things have happened to you, sometimes we just need somebody who is safe to say, I hear you, I believe you, I know that happened, to give you a hug, to listen to you talk about those things. And then it's time to start to move on and say, okay, what did I learn from those experiences? But so much of it seems to be a belief thing. I just see so many people that are stuck because they say, I've had these problems, I come from this background, and therefore I can never get better. Either because they're feeling too much shame, they're feeling guilt, they're feeling fear, they're feeling insecurity, they're feeling vulnerability. And that's okay to feel those things, but at some point you have to say, well, you know what? I can start to learn how to feel those things and process those things in a healthy way. And I have the ability to learn some new lessons and start to change my life. If you don't start to rise up a bit and have a little bit of that self-confidence and self-belief start to rise up within you, even if you have to fake it in the beginning, then you're really fighting a real uphill battle. And when you're talking about all the different issues, be it past abuse or trauma or whatever, or your current anxiety situations. So I think I don't have a tremendous amount to say about that, but it comes up enough where I hear things like, I need to find, the problem is I don't feel secure. The problem is I don't feel safe. I feel vulnerable when I go and do my exposures. And some of that, if you're coming from a situation where you have been traumatized or abused in the past, or you've had experiences that have taught you to feel unsafe, you have to recognize, like, oh, okay, all these people are telling me that I feel unsafe, but I am safe, but I just can't get that feeling of safety together. You have to start to build that feeling of safety by saying, well, this is something I learned in the past, and I have to start to understand and differentiate between what happened 10 years ago or 10 months ago or 20 years ago, whatever, and what is going on now. Now is not then. And just because I felt unsafe then doesn't mean I'm unsafe now. And I can learn a new experience. You have to be open to the fact that you can learn new things. And you have to be open to the fact sometimes, and one of the coolest things I ever heard from a trauma therapist was that even the darkest times had a silver lining. Like, you survived all of the bad things that happened to you. You found ways to cope. Maybe they weren't ideal, and maybe they led you into places that weren't ideal now, but you survived them. You survived those things. Like, you found a way to get out of bad situations, and you're still standing. If you're watching me today, you are still standing, you're still breathing, you're still upright. Like, you found a way to cope. That was one of the most profound things I've ever heard a trauma therapist say, that at some point you have to learn that, yeah, you have to learn that, like, well, those were terrible things, but I actually survived them. So maybe I do have the ability to do things I think I can't do. So there's so much going on here, but I wanted to address it because I know it complicates so much of this stuff for so many people. And it's worth talking about. And I think it's also worth engaging, like, just my stuff, the Claire Weekes stuff, the CBT stuff alone isn't going to be enough, really, if you're dealing with some really seriously past issues, some serious stuff in your past. Like, there's a lot of things that have to happen kind of at the same time, but you can do all that. You're capable of doing that. So let me see what's going on. I don't want to just like ramble at you for 20 minutes because that's a little rough. Let's see here. Working on YouTube. My brother. Okay, so let's put some stuff up on the screen and see. Courtney says, my brother will say he can handle anything that comes his way. Okay, I guess I'm like your brother. My feeling about the world is that I can handle anything that happens today. It doesn't matter what it is, I will handle it. And you can do that too. The difference is that your brother believes that he can, and you for some reason believe that you can't. You feel that maybe you lack that competency. Oh, there you go. You said it right here. I don't feel competent. But so much of learning competency and confidence comes from actually doing, like getting out there and saying, well, I don't feel competent, but I'm going to act competent anyway. I'm going to try these things. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to put myself out there, and I'm going to trust that it's going to rise up in me, and I'm going to be able to do these things. Like, that's important. It's kind of important to be able to do those things. So competency is not something that you could just decide to have today. You have to build competency. And I believe in my heart that every human being is competent. Every one of you is strong. Every one of you is intelligent. Every one of you is capable of learning new things in new ways. You're capable of experiencing things differently and learning from those experiences. And you're capable of building competency and confidence and new skills, new life skills. So let's see what Rachel has to say here. Sometimes you have to prioritize what's important now. I like this. In therapy, working on my past while dealing with anxiety. That's a tricky thing. And my dog Copper is going to chime in here. I guess he has something to say. I agree. I always talk about, and this is something I learned from a therapist many years ago now, like she likened it to like traumatic injury. So first we stop the bleeding. And to me, I always think if you're in a situation where you cannot leave your bedroom, you're housebound, you can't work, you can't go to school, and you're really, really in that crushed place because of anxiety, well, we can learn to stop the bleeding by learning to overcome those problems. So sometimes I say do that first, but often I think sometimes you got to do it all at the same time. And priorities do matter, because when you find that, well, when I walk out the door, I do my exposure, I try and eat at a restaurant, I go to a birthday party, I feel so vulnerable and shameful and unsafe, and I can't shake that. Well, that's a big red flag that says I may have learned to feel that way sometime in the past. Something taught me that. So I'm going to have to maybe look at that now. That's a big red flag. I think when you're willing to do the work and you're out there and you're doing it, but yet you can't seem to find that footing because you're continually feeling like you are not able or you're not worthy. I know people will say that, which is heartbreaking. I don't feel like I'm worth this. I'm not worth having this can't work for me, it's not worth it, or that they just don't think they can do it, they can't find safety, security, and footing. You may be dealing with some things that you have learned in the past, and that's not always specific trauma or abuse. Sometimes it's just the way you were raised, the relationships you had, the way people have treated you and talked to you over the years. You may have been taught that you are incapable, but that doesn't mean that it is true. So there's that. I want to see what Marcy has to say. These are good comments, guys. So I want to start to see what's going on here. I've been misunderstanding my emotions. I thought I was angry. Everyone did. I was feeling deep grief. Marcy, that is a huge revelation. But so you come to that revelation either on your own or through the assistance of a therapist or whoever that is, which is great. And now you have to work on that. So which I'm pretty sure that you are. So understanding what it is, knowing what it is half the battle, but then you have to actually do that. So like for somebody like Marcy, and I appreciate you sharing that here with everybody, like now you have to actually go into that grief and work through it. So there's a lot of things that happen at one time. Let's see what Ingrid has to say. Instead of seeing yourself as broken, yeah, okay, see yourself as resilient, which is really good. That's what I was saying before. Like you survived all of these bad things, regardless of what it is, and you made it here. And we can always learn new things. So much of this is a learning thing. Sandy, I agree, it is hard. Many people have a long, hard road to travel, but just because it's hard doesn't mean you're incapable of doing it. It just means that it's hard and tiring and sometimes emotionally draining. So let's see here. If you say you're broken enough, you believe it. And I think there's also a tendency, and I'm not going to throw stones at anybody. I'm not going to pick on anybody here at all. I'm just going to point out some things that I see that come up over and over and over. Sometimes the environment, and I say this mainly the online environment these days that you are immersing yourself in to help you go through those things, can be part of that problem. Like there's only so much time that you could spend talking about the narcissist that you were married to before now it's on you. And I've heard that said, but sometimes in some of those circles, that whether you were a victim of narcissism or domestic violence or some other abuse or a crime or whatever it is, sometimes like the feeling is if I have to hang on to this or I will invalidate it. And sometimes online communities and even people that are sort of making their living in that space, as opposed to trying to free you from that experience and let you leave it behind, it's almost like, well, no, I got to hang on to it and bring it with me, or else it will be invalidated and somehow it didn't happen and no one will believe me and I will lose it. But that's not true. So you have to be super careful about how you carry that stuff forward. Carry it forward as a learning tool. Carry it forward as something that makes you part of who you are, but that can also help you bring out the best parts of who you are, as opposed to just carrying it forward as a wound that will bleed forever. Like at some point, somebody is handing you stitches and sutures. You got to start to stitch that wound. Rachel's got a lot going on here. This is good. Question my strength, but I had it all along. This is excellent also. Like sometimes we're surrounded by that, I've heard it called toxic positivity. Like if you're not feeling amazing about what's going on then something's wrong. But like a lot of this stuff is going to make you feel really bad. So we talk about recovery from anxiety disorders and going into the fear. Well, we know that that's going to make you feel bad on a nuts and bolts standpoint, physically bad, afraid, unsure, all the physical sensations, all those scary thoughts. Oh my God, I'm going crazy or I'm dying. But dealing with some past experiences, past trauma and things of that nature, that can make you feel like really emotionally bad. But that has to happen, or else if we don't ever allow ourselves to feel those things, we can't ever learn from them. So that's a thing too. Let's see. I don't like to think of myself as incompetent, but I did go a great deal. Okay. And it is possible that the thought is in there somewhere. I think that's a really insightful statement for you to make. I think it is too. And again, I don't claim to be anybody's therapist here, and I'm certainly no expert on trauma or abuse or anything like that. But I just hear so many people where I think that stuff is sitting there. Nope, I can't do this. Nope, I can't do it. I just can't do it. I just can't do it. You're probably right. That's very insightful. Let's see. It's tricky when it's your business. What's helping people and what's keeping them stuck? The same rehashed ideas. I think, and that leads to this. Bethany, excellent. I'm glad Facebook is working for you now, by the way. And there is so much repetition. So I think it's important to find people who are going to take a really active approach that says, well, we're going to talk about your things. I'm going to become your compassionate witness if that's what you need. Do not underestimate the value of a professional who does this for a living. Your friends can only get you so much trauma resolution. George, I'll get to that in a second. I'll put you up on the screen. All right. I see your comment and I'll put it up there. So just don't underestimate the value of a professional who does this sort of stuff. And I'm not recommending anybody in particular, but it can really help. And I think you got to look for somebody who's going to say, all right, let's confront what happened or what has happened to you. Let's get that out on the table. But that can't be, the next 3 years of your life, getting it out on the table again and again and again to everybody that will listen. At some point, you have to say, okay, this happened. Now, what am I going to do with it? And another thing that I hear people bring forward with them a lot, Joe is here. Excellent dude. I am super happy that you're here. This is a dude that you should be listening to. This man has actually lived it and has made tremendous, tremendous strides. So, Joe, if you want to put just joeryan.com. Joe, I've known Joe for many years. He's a dear friend of mine, and he has a lot of good to say about the resolution of past trauma and abuse. But what I was going to say is you have to try and start to be proactive. You can't just talk about it forever. At some point, a good helper is going to say, okay, we've talked about it now. Now what can we learn from it and what can we do about it? And what I wanted to say, and Joe, I will get back to you. George, I'm definitely going to get back to you here, I promise. What I wanted to say is a lot of people also bring forward into this process the idea that the people who may be responsible for those bad experiences, parents, partners, whoever they happen to be, who have done you wrong in whatever way, you're going to have to confront them and get them to say, I hear you and I'm sorry that I did it. And from what I'm told, that is rare. So that's probably one of the hardest things for people to say, well, I'm never going to get that. So I'm going to have to get my validation from somebody else. I'm going to have to just live with the fact that this person's never going to apologize or even acknowledge what happened. And I'm going to have to find a way to move forward. Because after a while, we have to take responsibility for the fact that now it's on me to move forward. It's on me to move forward. So, George, what did you have to say here? How do you deal with a situation where one or more of your loved ones make you feel bad about your suffering on a daily basis? I mean, this is a super good question. And I think it's super common. To me, I can only give you my opinion on this, brother. And it's a good question. I can only give you my opinion. And remember, I'm not coming from a background of trauma and abuse. Fortunately, I did not have those situations. But what I think in those situations is that's a double-edged sword. Number one, it's not a double-edged sword. There's two sides to that. I don't know why a person would do that to somebody that they love. I can't understand it, but I know that they do. So somebody in your life is saying things to you that or acting toward you in a way that is highlighting the problem that you're trying to solve, as opposed to trying to support you while you're trying to solve the problem. Will we know their motivation for that? We won't. But the stoic in me, the stoicism, Buddhism, Taoism, these are things that resonate with me, would say that at some point you have to say, no, well, now it's on me. So yes, we can acknowledge that person is being less than a good human being, or those people are being less than good human beings, but we don't know why, and we can't control why they're doing that. But we can control what we do in response. So just because somebody says something to you doesn't mean that it is true. And that's one of those things that it gets ingrained in people over time. Because someone that I love told me that I'm weak, it means I'm weak. Because my dad told me this, it means it's true. Because someone of authority told me this, it means it's true. That's not true at all. What is true for you is what you decide is true for you. Now, it's a philosophical thing, and we could debate that because there's not absolute truth in that. But your truth is your truth. Your validation comes from inside you. So to me, I think you have to work on being able to look at that person and say, I don't know why you're saying this to me, but just because you're saying it doesn't mean it's true. And a lot of that, to me, my own opinion on that, is that you get caught up in seeking their approval, and you don't need their approval. You don't need anybody's approval in the end. And I know that's a deep topic too. It's not my bailiwick, and maybe I'm a little bit unusual the way I deal with that. But when we live our lives trying to get the approval of the people in our lives, we can love them without needing their approval. So there's lessons in that. So let us see here. No. George, I hope that helped. If anybody has anything they want to add to George's comment, I'm good with that. Let me see what I have going on here. Rachel says, Rachel, you are killing it, by the way. You're working really hard, and it shows. It shows. I'm really proud of what you're doing. I know everyone in the group is capable of doing hard things. I didn't see a way out of the dark hole when I joined. I've worked hard and stopped caring. Yep. This is great. I remembered who I was inside, and she wants to come back out. Very good. Very good. And you're right. It is about doing hard things. I believe that if I didn't believe that everybody could do hard things, I would never do this. Let's see here. Well, they're both dead. Yeah, okay. So, honestly, like and Courtney, you have that sense of humor that I enjoy so much. You have a wit about you. So I know you're being a little bit flippant about this, but yes, in that situation, too late, right? So you're going to have to find a way to make peace with the fact that that ship has sailed. And a lot of people carry anger and resentment, and it. I can't believe I'm saying this stuff. It sounds like if anybody told me that I would be having this discussion on a camera like a year ago, I'd tell you I was crazy. You were crazy, but it's true. If you're carrying a tremendous amount of resentment and anger into every situation, it's going to color the way you approach everything and the way you see everything. So you that's stuff that has to be worked through. Yeah, this is important. I've heard you say this many, 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 many times. Go into the original pain and feel the trauma. That's the only way it has to happen, and I think that's the way that you learn. So there's a lot of dovetail, right? So there's trauma recovery and recovery from abuse and things like that. Then there's the anxiety disorders that we talk about all the time. There is some dovetail for sure. Like it's a doing thing. It's not a thinking thing. It's a doing thing, not a feeling thing. There is thinking and feeling that goes along with recovery from trauma and abuse for sure. But in the end, it is also a doing thing. And the doing sometimes means you have to be willing to sit with that pain and feel it like you would have back in the day without all the protective stuff around you. There's a lot going on here that I don't want to get into because I'm not qualified to talk about those things, but that is a big statement. Yeah, I'll never get it. So Claire, that's very insightful too. You want an apology, but he'll never give it. And I think like that's just the way life is going to have to be. But it doesn't mean you're incapable of moving on, right? What does Mike have to say here? SSRI withdrawal, if that's even possible. So, okay, let's touch on that for a second. There are people who feel like they have been traumatized by other things. So trauma isn't always abuse. It isn't always, sexual assault. It isn't always an abusive parent. There are other things that are traumatizing too. Witnessing something terrible, being in a terrible accident. That's true. So I have heard people say that they have been traumatized by SSRI withdrawal. I have. I've also seen people who have said that they've been traumatized by their substance abuse problem, which I can't comment one way or the other whether that's true or not. That everybody has their own truth. But trauma, just because it's a bad experience, doesn't. Again, the title of the topic here was that your past is in a prison. So you can recognize, like, wow, that experience was so bad, it taught me some lessons that I have to start to unlearn a little bit. Because to me, trauma is I was unsafe or out of control, or I was either unsafe, in real danger, or incapable of controlling the situation and producing an outcome when it happened. This was beyond my control. I was being moved around and pushed around beyond my will, and I could not control it. And it felt dangerous and unsafe and insecure. It's okay to acknowledge that happened, but that was then. And today, you are not in the same situation. So we have to be willing to learn and accept that, okay, that was then, this is now. And what did I do then that helped me cope? How can I start to learn new things now that will help me cope today in a situation where I am safe today? So there you go. Yeah, I know you're a fan as well. There's a tremendous amount of Taoism and Stoicism and Buddhism that runs through a lot of what I say, whether I ever acknowledge it or not. I don't even know that half of it was rolled into what I say. Actually, CBT is based a lot. The principles of CBT really can come down a lot to the principles of Stoicism. So there you go. Forgiveness can be found without receiving an apology. Yeah, very good. Marcy, you're killing it here too. These are really good. This is clearly somebody who has done a lot of this work, so I love it. Let's see here. They can have their opinion. I don't have to listen. So this is so true, and I hate to make it sound really like hard and cold, like, because I know it's not all the time, but there's plenty of people in the world that have opinions that you don't listen to. You disagree with people politically. You disagree with their opinion of bands or sports teams or food or whatever. And you're just like, yeah, that doesn't make you feel bad. But somehow or other, because this is somebody that you are attached to via blood, like a relative or somebody that you care about, then we take their things to heart. Like what they say must be true. And that's not true. You can love somebody without being victimized by their words. I think that's possible. Let's see here. We can't force anyone from others. Is it possible some to not believe in themselves without there being a cause? Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer to that. But you know what? Maybe I do have an answer to that. If anybody wants to chime in on this, that would be really cool. Is it possible for someone to not believe in themselves without there being a cause? That would say that somehow belief, competence, confidence is some sort of thing that some people are born with and some are not. And my opinion on that, you're asking me, I don't believe that's true. I believe that those are things that we learn, and we may be more predisposed to act one way or another based on something we're born with. And I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you. You're born one way or the other, but I do think that it's possible that no. There you go. I just worked it out in my head. Courtney, I think my opinion on that is no. I don't believe that there is a situation where somebody can just believe themselves to be incompetent or incapable for no reason. Otherwise, every day you prove yourself through action. Every single day that we are alive on this earth, we prove ourselves capable and competent through action. We feed ourselves, we take breaths, we dress ourselves, we wash ourselves, we get jobs, we earn money, we raise kids, we build relationships, we tear down relationships. We live life every single freaking day from the time we are born. We are clearly competent. Something has taught you to ignore that and say, nope, I'm not I can't do stuff. So I don't believe that. I think there's got to be something back there that taught you that you are not competent. Let's see here. I'm quite sure I told you off. That's all right. I've been told off by many, many, many people. It's okay. But yes, when you're in the process of withdrawal, like Marcy went through, and I live that process, like everything changes. So I get it. And what happens during withdrawal is not an indicator of how somebody is for the rest of their life at all. Let's see here. This is gold. The only person's opinion that matters about you is your own. I love this and I live this. That can start to become, okay, so let's talk about this a little bit. Left unchecked. So, and I know this about myself. Like, I truly have absolutely no interest in what anybody is going to think about what I say or do. None. As long as I think I'm on the right path and I'm not hurting anybody and I'm being a good person, then I'm okay with me. Left unchecked, that can become douchebaggery. So the very people that may have been responsible for inflicting some of the trauma and abuse in the past might be those people. It's possible. Not all of them, but you could be victimized by somebody who feels that way. Like, I'm the only one that matters. Like, there's a line between feeling competent, confident, self-directed, and being an ass like that has no regard for anybody around you. So we have to be careful about that. Be careful about that. Let's see. Blame will keep you a victim. An apology will help, but it won't get you all the way. Important, Michael. Cool. And it's anybody who's gone through the withdrawal situation. It's a crappy situation. So it definitely leaves a mark for a while. And those sort of traumatic experiences, I think, teach us to be on guard. So a traumatic experience teaches us to be on guard for it happening again. We don't. Look, humans are like, I don't want to repeat shitty experiences either. Like, I'm not a robot. So we are on guard to guard against repeats of bad experiences. So there's a lot of that. Let's see, Marcia, I don't put you on the screen a lot. I hope you don't mind. The cause is hard to find. Okay, there you go. So, I mean, but I think this goes back to what we're saying, like being adopted, so, okay, there were some issues there that you weren't aware of. That alone, though, and I'll repeat this until the day they put me in a box, and some people will agree with me, but that's okay, because I see more than enough of you making tremendous strides that I know this to be true. The emotions surrounding Marcy, I'll use you for an example. I hope you don't mind. Knowing that you were adopted, and there are some emotions that come with that. That doesn't make somebody afraid to leave their bedroom or afraid to have a panic attack or afraid of their own heartbeat. It doesn't. Like, that may have been part of the reason why you started having attacks, but as soon as you become afraid of the next attack, now we're in anxiety disorder land, and now we're in like my territory. So that's why you have to work on both of those things at the same time, or at least close together. So there you go. You may feel you're incapable because you have low self-esteem, but again, I would think that we learn self-esteem one way or the other. I can't tell you why somebody would become self-assured or not, but I do believe that's something that we learn. I don't know how somebody could be born with low self-esteem. I believe we must learn it somehow. And I think that we learn low self-esteem. I'm not sure that we learn high self-esteem. I believe that, again, our daily experiences says, I'm living life. I'm on the planet. I'm getting things done. Experience should teach us that we are competent. Yet some people discard that and say, no, I'm not competent. My self-esteem, I don't believe I'm good. Let's see here. No. an apologies and acknowledgement. We can give ourselves acknowledgement. Yeah, there we go. That's the other empathetic people. I think that's the it was Monique that told me about compassionate witness. I think that's that person. Does knowing the reason matter? I think that's case by case, to be honest with you. For me, if there was a specific reason that caused me to have my first panic attack in 1986, I might one day find it out, but I don't care. So to me, it doesn't matter. To other people, it may matter. And I think the litmus test is when you can start making progress, like on the anxiety stuff, then, but yet you still have that nagging thing going on that, okay, well, it's good now. I can get back to work. I'm driving. I'm living life. I'm not trapped in my bubble anymore. But I'm still having this sadness. I'm still having these regrets. I'm still angry. That's a good indicator that there's something else that you might have to work on, to me. And I'm only going based on thousands of people that I've interacted with over the last 10 years, 5 years of the podcast and going back 5 years before that. So let's see here. Talking about trauma, panic attacks are traumatizing themselves, adding to the fear of them and gain the confidence that we get through them. Yeah, but like I take a little bit of exception to the idea that people will say, well, now I have trauma from my panic. No, I'm not. They are difficult experiences. But when we say, and I've heard people wave that flag, like, well, now I have PTSD, so I have an anxiety disorder, and the anxiety disorder has given me PTSD because I have panic attacks. Okay. I mean, in a way, we choose how we label those experiences. So I'm not sure that I'm buying that the trauma is now added. Then how come you don't have trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma? So much of that is you can acknowledge it as, well, that was kind of a traumatic experience. Okay, end of story. You just don't want to build your new home on top of that in that treehouse of trauma. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Off topic, you need a dog mask. I saw Jay's dog mask. I may have to get a dog mask. Jay has better style than me for sure. Finding the right therapist who can help you explore things is super helpful. I'm a huge fan of professional help. And in this situation, when people are trying to solve an anxiety disorder problem, I'm agoraphobic. I cannot leave my house. I'm afraid to be left alone in the house because I have panic attacks. Somebody who's going to help you navigate your childhood is not helpful at all. That is the wrong therapist. So what we're up against here is that if you're trying to solve two problems, agoraphobia, for instance, panic disorder, and you're trying to uncover some past things that are lingering in your life and are causing problems, it's difficult. You almost need a therapist who's going to be able to do both, or you need two different therapists who will work together with you as a team. That's a thing. That's a thing. So it's tough because it's sometimes two different things, right? Sometimes two different things. You are not. I am not a robot. I am not a robot. Let's see. What does Rachel have to say? I hope you guys are cool with this. Now we're just basically having a discussion. Like I said, I didn't want to talk. I want to go back for a second and remind you that the reason why I'm on camera today talking about this is I would love for all of you to at least understand that it is possible that you can overcome whatever's in your past. Like if you're not willing to at least acknowledge that you can get better and you can overcome it and you are capable of doing it, then you're in for a tough situation. So your past does not have to be a prison. It is possible to overcome that. Not easy, but it is possible. So what does Rachel say? Trauma's out to me. I didn't know what it was. It was classed as trauma. Yeah, I've also heard a lot of people kind of getting angry about the trauma thing and the use of the word. And again, that's not my bailiwick. I'm only going by what has been relayed to me by a lot of expert people. Like the word trauma is almost sometimes like the word anxiety. It gets overused sometimes. I've heard clinicians say that. And sometimes somebody comes in and they're convinced, well, I'm suffering from trauma. And they wouldn't fit the bill along any standard measure, but yet they've adopted the label of trauma and they feel somehow they're in a special situation that requires work that they don't really need to do. So it's tough. It's a tough one. Let's see. Oh, good, Marcy. Thank you. I appreciate that. We need more of that in the world. And I do appreciate you sharing. Anna Marie, what is up? Good to see you. Always good to see you. This is fair. This is fair. I don't care why it happened. I would like for it to stop. Some people do take that approach. That was my approach, to be honest with you. And I remember I did at one point in my process go and see a therapist who I knew it was wrong from the beginning for me. She was the wrong therapist for me from the beginning because she just wanted to go dig and dig and dig and talk about my parents and talk about, whatever. And I knew that wasn't right for me and it wouldn't have helped me anyway. So when you're dealing with a situation like yours, my friend, where I know it's driving anxiety and things of that nature, like why it happened doesn't matter anymore. Incapacitated after having a serious panic attack. Well, that was you decided that you were incapacitated because you had a frightful experience that didn't actually hurt you. So you have to own some of that. It's really important. Let's see here. Stephanie, what up? Let's see who else we have. It is possible. Okay, Bethany is another poster child for progress. Bethany and Joe, my two friends here, are poster children for like, oh, Jay's here. Jane is maybe, Jay, you wearing your dog mask? It is possible I made so much progress. I try to take all the insights and run with them to freedom. And it's a tremendous amount of work. So I've seen some of my friends like Joe and Bethany engaged in the hard work all the time, sometimes to an exhaustive level. But it can be done. It absolutely can be done. Hang on here. Did I miss? I'm trying to not miss people here. What is going on here? Jarek, what's up? Yarek, I assume. Sorry, I probably said that wrong. How are you? How's New York? And well, yeah, I live right in the middle of like the biggest hotspot in the country, New York metro area. But I'm all right. It's okay. We're getting there. It's hard, but we're getting there. No. Let me scroll down a little bit. Holly's here. She fell asleep. It happens. It all happens. This is good too. It comes down to how we label the thoughts and emotions. We need to just write out our emotions with no judgment. That is a skill that a therapist can teach you. Like, it's okay to have these emotions. It's okay, like, be angry one day. It's okay to be disappointed. It's okay to be sad or regretful. A lot of that stuff. It's okay to feel all those things. Just don't judge yourself as broken for feeling them. So that's a really good comment. Yes, people do overuse the word trauma, as I said. So boring. Yes, it is true. Let's see here. I honestly feel triggered when I hear their trauma from my dear counselor, Jerry. This is good. This is a cognitive behavioral approach for sure. So Jerry knew what he was talking about when it came to that sort of stuff. It's whether or not you know how it broke. But again, that applies very much to the anxiety disorders. Many people would say that when it comes to true trauma and abuse, you do need to know what happened. It's important. No. Anna Marie says, another good friend of mine that I am hugely fond of. My past haunts me. I wish I could rewrite. Okay, so sometimes I have heard it said, and again, I have to keep reminding you guys that I'm sometimes only relaying things I've heard from other experts in this. This is not my area of like knowledge, but I have heard it said sometimes that we can traumatize ourselves. Now, maybe there was a triggering thing in the past, a parent or either an event or an experience or relationship that taught us to do that. But I have heard it said that people who are continually like dumping on themselves, I embarrassed myself 15 years ago and I can't stop thinking about I'm terrible, I'm the worst, people hate me. We have the ability to traumatize ourselves. I have heard that said. I don't know if it's valid or not, but there are clinicians that seem to have that opinion that can be a thing. You have to learn that that's not required. So there are new habits that you can learn. It's not required to go back and reread all of those embarrassing chapters or things that we call failures in life. They happen, they're over, you can move on. So you can learn to do that differently. Let's see here. Positional vertigo. Yep, I know all about it. It is traumatic. It is no fun. When the world is spinning, it is no fun. So good job getting through that. That sucks. That sucks. Let's see here. Forgive yourself. Anna Marie, you might want to listen to Joe's podcast. You can go to joeryan.com. You probably get a lot of what Joe has to say. There's a lot of what he talks about applies to what you're going through, I think. Let's see here. Food poisoning. My 11-year-old self became afraid of eating outside the house. There you go. Like, and I talk about this all the time. Sometimes it is one event. And it's as simple sometimes as that thing where like, oh, I love dogs. And then I get bit by a dog and I'm afraid of every dog instantaneously. That can happen. That can happen. I reanimate old situations. Yeah. And I think a lot of people fall into that habit of like, so I've talked about this before where, well, I'm an overthinker. Some people will say I'm an overthinker, I'm a perfectionist, I'm type A. Some people will say I can't let it go. I just can't let it go. That's also a thing that we label sometimes, and we start to find an identity in that. No, this is my thing. This is what I do. But that doesn't have to be your thing forever. That's a thing that you are at some point chose to do. Like at some point you chose to do that, and then it just became a habit, and you can learn new habits, I think. So 45 minutes. I'm going to just circle back again to the very beginning to say the reason why I wanted to talk about this is I wanted to, number one, acknowledge that trauma and past experiences are real and do play a role in anxiety recovery. They can add wrinkles and obstacles and color it in ways that people who did not experience those things don't have to deal with. So I want to acknowledge that to be true. I've never said that it wasn't. I also want to acknowledge that these things that I talk about, the methods that I talk about, the cognitive behavioral approach to dealing with an anxiety disorder, isn't necessarily useful in resolving things like past trauma or abuse. Some of the concepts, especially if you're working with a good therapist, can be applied for sure, where you can learn like, oh, I'm in a bad thinking habit in regards to that thing that happened 25 years ago. So some of it is helpful, but you cannot surrender, float, and accept your way through resolving some of those past issues. I want to acknowledge that. But I also want to acknowledge that all of it can be overcome. So I acknowledge that it is true, that it makes things harder on you. I acknowledge that, it adds obstacles that other people don't have. The things that I talk about all the time are not the fix all for all past issues, but they can be part of it, and you can do it all. You are able to do it all. You're capable of it. And at some point, you have to adopt a little bit of measure of self-belief that says, well, everybody keeps telling me I could do it, so I guess I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to start talking about the things I've never talked about. I'm going to start maybe confronting issues I've been running from. And I'm also going to start doing my exposure so I can get out of the house, so I can eat at restaurants, so I can do all the things that I'm afraid to do. You're capable of doing all of those things, all of them. We have never met. One day, maybe we will. I'm not sure where you live, but yes, like I don't have to know you all that well, Courtney, to tell you that I think you absolutely do. Some of the interactions that you and I have had, and they're always good-natured, I believe, and I enjoy the interactions that we have, but yes, I've heard a fair amount of offense taken at the suggestion that maybe you could be more than just panic about driving on the freeway. Sometimes I've seen you get angry at the mere suggestion that isn't you. So I think you do identify with yourself that way. And I have known people, let me just say this. I have known people, and I actually interviewed one as one of my success story. I'm not going to say who it is because I've done a bunch of success stories. But one success story, that video that I did with a woman who's actually in the Facebook group, and she contributes now and then. She, in 2008 or 2009, she would have told you, too bad, I am agoraphobic, F yous all, that's the way it is. The world must deal with me this way. And she's not that anymore. So there you go. Good, totally good natured. That's what I like to hear. And she's not that anymore. So maybe I'll send you a message and I'll point you at that video, Courtney. You might be interested in hearing what that person had to say, because she was once you. She was, oh, this is the way I am. This is the way it is. So let's see here. The dog thing happened to Linda. Yeah, right. And that's super common. That's a simple phobia, and we can develop those instantaneously. And this very similar mechanism leads to the anxiety disorder thing. So let's see. I focus on today. The future doesn't exist until it becomes the present. That is a very Taoist and Buddhist and Stoic thing to say. So Albert, I'm all with you on that. Stephanie says, good to see you, Steph. I become obsessed with 2 chronic health issues that stopped my whole life in its track. Working on not labeling myself as broken, but rather than just different. Good. Like that's what Ingvild said earlier on in the video. That's really cool. You're not broken. You've just gotten into some bad thinking habits when it comes to that sort of stuff. And Jay, at some point we'll be able to eat at restaurants again, dude. I know it. Let's see. Kathleen is here. Welcome. Let's see what Brianna has to say. What time is it? We're approaching 50 minutes. I'll hang for a little bit more if you guys have more questions. How are we supposed to react to real symptoms? You're supposed to not react. Brianna, I know you're new to this. So I will answer the question for sure. I get dizzy from my sinuses, but I can't accept that it's just that. So how are you supposed to react to them? Is you're not supposed to react to them. Like that's the problem. The fact you're trying to find something to say like, well, I feel dizzy, or I feel my heart racing, or I feel tingly, or whatever it is. So therefore I must do something. I either must do something because something is really wrong and I have to save myself, or I must get rid of this feeling. So the answer is, how do I react? Is that you learn that you do not have to react. When you don't react and you just let those things happen, and let the worst thing happen that you think is going to happen, and it doesn't, then this is how you learn through experience that trying to find the proper reaction to those things has been a dead end all along. I know that sounds crazy to you because you're new to this process and it sounds damn near impossible, but that's how you do it. That's how we act. Did you just reference me? I don't think I did, Marcy, but I don't know. Maybe I did unknowingly. Maybe I did unknowingly. I don't know. Quick, think of questions. Mike goes like, quick, ask a question. I can't think of any question. Oh, Gina's here. What's up, Gina? Let's see what Gina has to say. The first time the hospital didn't make you feel anxious. That's amazing. So like, and I know that is not where you were. Like, I know that the hospital would have been a really, really hard place for you to endure, not that long ago. So amazing. That's great. That's really, really great. Paulie, what up, dude? Good to see you, man. Slow when I have to, and I write in English. You're okay. Your English is good. Your English is just fine, Daniela. So let's see here. I'm limited. No. I've been reading about dog behavior to try and understand them better. That's fair. So I think, the dog behavior, that's a simple phobia. And that's a good way to approach a simple phobia, is to learn about dogs. And it helps give a measure of control back to the situation. Like people who are afraid to fly, I was not a great flyer. I still don't love it. Like one of the things that really helped me is I just learned everything I needed to know about the noises that the plane is going to make when, I know like what direction we're facing on the runway so that I can expect, we're going to have to turn left or right. Like that helps. So that's not a bad thing to do. Not a bad thing to do. Rachel is also, whoops, sorry, Marcy, I keep putting you up here. We're stuck with our diagnosis above our potential. Let's talk for a second about diagnosis. And Rachel is also living proof. And like we have seen her do the hard work in the group of somebody who was literally stuck in her room and not sure, like I'm supposed to take a walk and now, going out all the time. It's been really great. So these things are possible. Marcy's thing about stuck with diagnosis is important point too, because I've also heard people take the diagnosis of panic disorder or agoraphobia. I haven't heard like really taken too hard. When people are diagnosed with that stuff, like, all right, like it's tough, but they have something they can work on. I have heard people take the diagnosis of OCD really, really hard. Like the doctor will say you have OCD, or the therapist will say you have OCD, and they will crumble in the face of that because somehow or other they think that OCD means that they're broken, there's something wrong with them. So the OCD diagnosis often sends people into a bad place and will kind of put a big roadblock, stops their recovery for a little while they work through that. The diagnosis of PTSD or CPTSD, I've also seen that happen. Sometimes the diagnosis of PTSD or CPTSD actually helps somebody because it's an acknowledgement. Like, yeah, I've been through some shit. Finally, somebody is acknowledging that, and it helps. But often I've seen it put people into a bad place for a little while. And that's where they start to like, oh no, like I'm broken. And they wrap themselves in the cloak of that. And that can be difficult. That's really hard. Let's see what Holly has to say real quick. I'm going to end it at an hour at the most because I can't go more than an hour. I have other things that I have to do, but I'll take comments. If we run out of comments, that's great. And I'll end it. But Holly, I really need an ass kicking. I fell right back into my old habits. So you may have to start all over. And if you fall back into your old habits, then I would suggest you start all over. You'll just go really, really fast this time. So if in fact you find yourself in a situation where like, I started doing all my old habits again, I'm stuck in my room again, or whatever it happens to be, then fine, go back to the beginning and just retrace your steps again. You'll just take them faster this time. That's perfectly okay to do that. It's perfectly okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. No. You had 9 minutes. So we got about 6 minutes left or whatever. So there you go. How about earthquakes? I know. Well, look, oops, sorry. Hang on, let's see what Bethany says. Stuck in my trauma recovery because of the panic and anxiety. There you go. And that's breaking out of the label of like, nope, I am trauma, I am abuse, I am narcissism, I am whatever it is you have been subjected to. I must talk about it all the time. I must validate it all the time. And at some point you decide, I'm done with that. I'm like, I got to move forward from it now. And if those people are, I was reading Serrana's comments. And if the people who are responsible for that are still doing what they do, then you leave them behind. All right, that's okay. It's okay to do that. Sometimes we have to do that. That's a little bit difficult. Oh, this is good, Bethany. It's like being lost in a maze. Serrana wants, am I so well groomed? Is it this side? Can you see it? I actually took a tiny little bit, like it's just getting a little bit too much. So I did trim a little bit, and I got a little bit too close there. The gray covers it, so it's all right. I don't feel very well groomed, but thank you. Let's see here. I was just diagnosed with GAD. Somebody said, oh, where's Rachel's thing here? I was desperate to be diagnosed. Yeah, Rachel's dropping truth bombs all the time, and they're really good. So sometimes a diagnosis is at least validation that you're not crazy, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I like how you're owning that. Like, I thought a diagnosis would help fix me. A diagnosis is nothing but a label. I mean, it can inform the next steps, so it can be useful sometimes. Some diagnoses are wrong. Remember, we're talking about behavioral sciences, which are not necessarily always exact. Like, behavioral sciences are not like chemistry. So we got to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. Let's see. What does Bonnie have to say? I'm diagnosed with GAD, panic agoraphobia. I hate that. Okay. Well, if you don't feel like you're that bad, then who the hell cares what the letters are? Like, and it's to a certain extent, like you can just decide, like, all right, fine, those are the labels. I'm just going to let that be what a therapist writes down for an insurance company. You can do it that way. It's totally fine. Like, ain't nothing wrong with that. Let it just be for them and not even for you. You don't have to live by those letters and those diagnoses. So there you go. No. Let us see here. Should we sick of me? Nah, Rachel, it's all good. I think everybody's been really, really good about contributing here. Yeah. I could probably use Copper's dog brush, possibly. We'll see. Let's see. Monica says there was a post this morning. By the way, if you're watching, because this is on my Facebook page, so not all of you here are in the group. You should join the group if you're watching on YouTube and you want to be on Facebook. Maybe you don't want to be. Join the group. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. theanxioustruth.com/links. Follow the link to the Facebook group if you need to find it. There was a post this morning about someone who was experiencing new symptoms. It's the same thing, just in different shoes. Yes, that is true. And so what Monica is saying here, and I think some of these things also apply in things like trauma recovery. When you learn lessons as you go forward, and Monica has learned her anxiety lessons, when something new comes up, you now have a roadmap to follow. You have experience and you have proven your competency. So Monica, that's great. You have proven to yourself that you are competent and you have the ability to handle new symptoms when they come up. And so if something new pops up, you know what to do. So even, and I've seen this with people who are in trauma recovery and are dealing with past issues, they get stronger and stronger over time. Sometimes something new will come up and throw you for a loop for a little while, but you have experience to fall back on to say, I can deal with this. I can work this through. So it's really good. Thank you, Monica. I appreciate that. Jamie's here. What up? A little late. That's okay. No. What did Mijan? I'm sorry. I don't want to miss your comment. Remind me why a person gets stuck with a need for approval. I can only tell you what I don't know what the answer to that is. Like, I'm not the kind of person who needs approval, so it's hard for me to comment on why you might feel like you do. But to me, I think that need for approval is based on not feeling and I'm using these words a lot lately. Confident in yourself, competent, like I know what to do and I'll be able to handle myself, and self-directed. Like, well, I will know what to do. I can create my own roadmap based on what's in here and in here. So if you don't have those things, you don't trust your ability to create a roadmap. You don't trust your ability to make decisions. You don't think that you're competent or confident. We can look externally to other people to approve of what we're doing. Did I do that right? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Now, understand the difference between, like, if you're learning a new skill, like if I'm learning, and I'm learning the guitar, I have to ask a guitar teacher, is this right? Like, what am I doing wrong here? That's one thing. But seeking approval for just about everything because you doubt everything you do is, I think, based on a lack of confidence and competency, feeling of competency. You don't believe that you are competent. But you are. You prove yourself competent every single day. So just take your ability to live basic life things like knowing enough to drink a glass of water if you're thirsty. That's competency. So, like, take your life experiences and say, well, I live a daily life every single day. You can do that. Like, I'm competent. I'm clearly competent. So I don't need this person to approve of what I'm doing. Like, I know that I'm going to be able to do the right thing. So there's a difference between asking somebody, am I doing this right? Should I do this? And wanting an opinion like, I'm going to do this, but I might be missing something. Hey, can you give me another set of eyes on this? Like, everybody does that from time to time. So you'll learn. It's a fine line as you go. Linda has been diagnosed with all of those things, and I'm not that bad. Exactly. I don't care. Excellent. Love it. Can we just be diagnosed with ABC? We'll just make our own diagnosis. We'll just call our own stuff. Carla's here on YouTube. What up? No, 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 no. Listening to others in the group helps me rationalize things. Yeah, this is the reason why I love the group so much. And Roxana, it's really good to see you here. The reason why I love the group so much is that your crowdsourcing competence, your crowdsourcing confidence, your crowdsourcing direction. It's great when people share this stuff. Like it really is. I think it's really helping. It really helps people. Like if you're not sure of yourself, the group can be sure for you, and you could follow the roadmap of people who are laying it down before you. So there you go. Ben, it'll stay up in the group, and it's not in the group. It'll stay up on my page. It'll stay up on YouTube, dude. So you go back and listen. It's okay. It's all good. I hit the hour. Safe people want to encourage you. That's good. That's good. That's really good. Oh, I want to see what Joe had to say about that too. Growing up with judgment, safe people want to encourage you. Safe people do want to encourage. Well, Bethany, I think I'm not sure what you mean by safe people, but like you should try and surround people. Look, I would say this. If you are dealing with people, if you're in the habit of trying to seek approval from people and they are sometimes giving you negative feedback or often giving you negative feedback, and you feel like you need their approval to go forward, because if you don't, they're going to whack you because they're going to tell you did it wrong, that's not a good person to be seeking approval from. It's exactly the opposite person. So I think we should all be surrounding ourselves with people who will say, well, I can help you talk this through this, but you can do this. Like, well, let's talk about it. But I want you to understand that you know what to do. You're going to figure out what to do. I'll listen, but like you should surround yourself with people who will help you believe in your ability to do it without their approval. Don't surround yourself with people who are happy to continually give you approval when you ask for it. That's not a good sign. That's actually not really a good sign at all. Joe has a good thing. Growing up with judgment all the time makes us seek approval in life. And I think, Joe, at one point, and Joe and I have had just hours and hours and hours of discussion about these things. That thing you told me once where it was, well, I developed a habit of doing these things because if I didn't, I was afraid that at any given time I was going to get blindsided, and like this was a protection mechanism. So I think I get that. I guess I get that. Like I have to ask you if it's okay, because if it's not okay, I'm going to do something you don't like, and then you're going to whack me, either physically or emotionally. So I kind of get that. No. Let's see. Save like we say in the go. Okay, there you go. I kind of had to think it through, I guess, to figure out what it was you were saying. Never rely on a safe person if you seek to healthy relationships. There you go. I think you're right. Healthy relationships should encourage you to not seek approval. Like, you don't have to ask me that. You don't have to ask me that. You can do this yourself. You can do this yourself. I think, and I'll touch on that for just a second, and then we're going to wrap it up. But I think that a healthier person is, I'm going to flat out say this, even though it might not be popular. But I think when we all get to the point where we feel competent and confident, and we leave behind those issues of insecurity or low self-esteem, that we become cheerleaders for the people who come behind us then. Like that's important. Let's see. There you go. I didn't get rid of I kept up the screen too long. I think you can become the type of person who teaches the next person who comes behind you and teaches the people in your life that they don't need your approval. Like, you don't have to ask for my approval. Like, I'm going to help you find your own voice. And I think that's great. I think you will see, as you become a stronger person, you become the type of person that I'm talking about. Like the type of person who would not let somebody become reliant upon them. You would want them to be self-sufficient. Like, we should all be rooting for other human beings to be strong and capable and confident and active and proactive. Every single person on this freaking planet should be rooting for every single other person to be good at life. We should, because it benefits all of us, even for just the reason of being a selfish bastard. If everybody around you is good at life, then your life will be better. So why are people not rooting for other people to be good at life and helping them to be good at life is beyond me. It would make the world so much better for every one of us. So there you go. There's my rant to kind of end it up. Never rely on a safe person, which is good advice. Too much positive feedback is dangerous. Also, do never surround yourself with just yes men. So there you go. Have to be perfect. You can be patronizing. All right. Well, I'm over an hour, but there's some good stuff going on here. So let's see. What time is it? 4 o'clock. Where am I going to go anyway? It's lockdown still. Let's see. There's something very gratifying too. I struggle in that area. One of the reasons for joining. Yes, there's something very gratifying. Let's see. Oh, here, Andrew finished. Vegas, what up? I love Andrew Vegas. There's something gratifying about doing something and accomplishing a goal. Yes, there totally is, dude. Like after a while, that just becomes normal, and you don't even think about it, the fact that you're doing it. But there is something to be said for that. And every single time you do that, you build an experience that says, "Hey, I am a competent person, and I can be confident." So there you go. Encourage independence. This is a huge thing that, I mean, by virtue of the fact, I don't know if you guys heard the podcast episode I did with Long Island Against Domestic Violence. My little sister is the associate director of that agency. And that is a huge topic in domestic violence and abuse circles. Like, you know, a healthy relationship encourages each other to be independent and stand on their own 2 feet. Where an abusive relationship, one of the partners wants the other to be dependent upon themselves. And that's going back to some of the stuff we talked about earlier. Do we learn to have low self-esteem? Yeah, I kind of think we do learn to have low self-esteem. And people that are looking for that and want to ride in to save you and prop you up, big red flag. Big red flag. So there you go. Just be a good person. Wouldn't it be great? Like there really aren't a lot of rules to being a good person. I think there are very few. There are very few. Not a whole lot. Let's see here. Have to be motivated. Have to be working hard. Yeah. Thank you. You just have to be me. And this particular situation that we're in right now, I'm off the rails at this moment. We're not even talking about trauma anymore in the past, but that's all right. I enjoy the conversations. This is a big deal going on right now, I think, too. Like the questioning of like, wait, what were we doing again a month ago? Like, I was having a conversation with Jay, if Jay's still hanging out, a couple of weeks ago. And, so will we, we're going to go back to work. I like to say this, we're going to go back to work, but what are we going to work on? Like a lot of questions like that are being asked right now. We're going to go back to work. Just what do we want to work on? Do we want to work on the same things we were working on 2 months ago? Maybe we don't. We'll see. All right. I think we're done. I'm out of control. I feel like, I don't remember who used to do like a Regis. Forget it. That's an old reference. I'm not going to date myself with that. So I will try to write about it sometimes in post. Rachel, I always enjoy when you write because it's always good stuff. So there you go. And what is important going forward? And dude, you and I have spent a lot of time on the phone the last few weeks talking about this stuff. It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Like what is, what's going to be important for everybody going forward? I think a lot of it may change. At least I hope it does. So there you go. All right, guys, that's it. 1 hour and 7 minutes. I didn't expect it to be this long. I hope the message, if you are doubting yourself and you are cloaking yourself in, but I have trauma, so this can't work for me. I'm telling you, you're goddamn wrong. Start to believe yourself a little bit and start to understand that you are capable of learning new ways, new lessons, and making positive change in your life. If there's anything you take out of this 1 hour and 7 minutes, it is that if you are insistent that your particular wrinkle means that this stuff can't happen for you, you're wrong. Like just imagine for a minute that you may be wrong about that because you are. So there you go. Thank you, Joe. I will leave that up as the parting comment. I've watched this dude do it, and I've watched others do it too. It's possible. So there you go. All right, folks, I guess keep commenting wherever you happen to be. I'll do my best to answer them, I guess, on the page or on YouTube. If you joined from YouTube today and, watched from YouTube, a few of you guys that are on YouTube, I appreciate it because I have all but abandoned my YouTube channel. So I figured I'd resurrect it a little bit with this one. I appreciate you guys stopping by. I'll take you off the screen. And what else can I tell you? That's it. All right, I'm out. See you guys later. Have a good one. End the broadcast. Awkward pause at the end while I hit the button.